Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're diving into that highly engineered and, let's be honest, kind of frustrating moment right before you leave the grocery store. You definitely know the one, the final receipt check. We're going to break down the cutting-edge tech, the massive financial stakes, and the sneaky psychology behind why stores actually do this. We've all been there, right? You just spent 20 long minutes navigating crowded aisles, you meticulously scanned every single item at self-checkout, and the terminal gives you that big green paid screen. But suddenly, right as you walk toward the sliding doors, a cyan security barrier pops up, or a greeter steps right in your path asking for a little piece of paper. It totally begs the question, if you already paid for your stuff, why the second checkpoint? Well, it's really easy to take this moment as a personal accusation. Like the store is suddenly questioning your honesty right at the finish line. But if we flip the script and look at it from the store's perspective, this checkpoint is actually the ultimate intersection of two completely different worlds colliding in real time. Think about it like a giant puzzle. This receipt check is the exact point where the digital world finally meets physical reality. Over in the store's computer systems, there's a perfect digital blueprint of your transaction. The barcodes were scanned, the database was updated, and the inventory was adjusted. But sitting right there in your shopping cart is the physical, tangible merchandise. This door check, it's simply the retailer's absolute final mechanism to ensure that the physical cart matches that digital blueprint perfectly before those items leave the building forever.
So why on earth are they so obsessed with matching these two things up? Simple. It comes down to a massive, staggering financial vulnerability. Research actually shows that retailers lose an average of $1.94 million per store every single year to what the industry casually calls inventory shrinkage. That's not just a couple of forgotten candy bars at the bottom of a cart. We are talking about a catastrophic hemorrhage of inventory that impacts the entire operation of the business.
And when you break down where this theft actually goes down, the numbers are pretty eye-opening. A whopping 47% of all retail theft happens right at the store entrances and exits. To put that into perspective, fitting rooms, which you might think are prime spots for this, account for just 23%. When nearly half of all your losses are literally walking right out the front doors, that exit suddenly transforms from a friendly, welcoming threshold into a highly strategic bottleneck designed to capture those losses. Because look, we aren't just talking about an accidental misscan here. A huge driver of this crazy loss is organized retail crime. I'm talking about so-called push-out thefts. This is where individuals load up giant carts with high-value, totally unpaid merchandise and boldly just walk out the door. These hits cost stores an average of $1,750 per single incident. These are highly orchestrated professional operations that cause devastating financial impacts before a customer even hits the parking lot. Honestly, a passive greeter at the door just isn't going to cut it anymore. So to fight back against this, the technology used at these checkpoints is evolving at warp speed. Standard security cameras, which, used to just be passive little recorders you'd maybe review days later, are being radically upgraded. They're turning into active, AI-powered surveillance grids. Stores are now using advanced computer vision to actively monitor the checkout and exit zones in absolute real time. The way this whole system works is actually pretty brilliant. Instead of sending a heavy video data up to some slow, distant cloud server, modern retail tech uses something called edge computing. Basically, the camera captures the frame, a computer located right there physically inside the store processes it locally, and alerts reach staff in literal milliseconds. This instantly flags scanning anomalies like someone switching a barcode or bypassing the scanner entirely while keeping response times incredibly fast and actually preserving customer privacy by anonymizing the data right there on site. And the expansion of this tech is moving like a wildfire. Industry projections show that by 2028, half of all large retailers are going to expand this computer vision for store monitoring. This invisible AI layer predicts queue lengths, flags suspicious checkout behavior, and is projected to reduce overall shrinkage by a staggering 40%. For retailers trying to protect their razor-thin margins, that is a massive return on investment. But what really surprised me is how this tech is already manifesting in the physical world for us shoppers. We are actually seeing automated verification barriers popping up in stores across the UK and Europe, places like Sainsbury's, Primark, and Lidl. In these setups, customers literally have to scan the barcode on their printed receipt at a physical smart gate just to make the doors open. No valid receipt? You simply cannot physically exit the self-checkout area. No way around it. Now, all this naturally brings up a pretty major point of friction. What are your legal rights as a shopper? Are you actually forced to comply with this? Well, it entirely depends on where you are. At a traditional supermarket, receipt checks are generally completely voluntary. However, at membership stores, think Costco, Sam's Club, or BJ's Wholesale, it's a totally different ballgame. When you sign up, you sign a contractual membership policy agreeing to mandatory receipt checks at the exit. If you refuse there, they have every right to just revoke your membership on the spot. So, what happens at a regular supermarket if you just confidently walk right past the receipt checker? Well, refusing to show it doesn't automatically give staff the right to tackle you or detain you. Retailers operate under a legal mechanism called the shopkeeper's privilege. This means they can only hold you for a reasonable amount of time if they have established verifiable, probable cause that you've stolen something. A simple no thanks at the door, that just doesn't meet that legal bar. But hold on, because there is a catch here. Impartially speaking, while a traditional store can't legally hold you against your will just for ignoring the greeter, retailers do operate on private property. They possess the complete legal authority to set the terms and conditions for entry. So if you consistently refuse to play ball with their receipt-checking process, they can legally ban you from ever returning to their property, effectively ending your grocery runs there for good. This whole dynamic creates an incredibly delicate balancing act for these stores. Just look at the data on how this security impacts shoppers. 27% of customers say these measures make shopping way less convenient, and over 46% say the impact really depends on the item and the amount of friction involved. Heavy-handed security tactics, like super aggressive receipt checks or locking up basic everyday items, run a massive risk of alienating perfectly honest paying shoppers who, frankly, just want to buy their groceries and go home. And let me tell you, alienating customers hits the retailer exactly where it hurts, the wallet. The data shows that over 77% of consumers make impulse purchases at least sometimes. If security friction frustrates a shopper, or if they feel harassed right at the door, the retailer risks completely destroying that impulse purchase revenue. Think about it. A customer who feels suspected of theft is far less likely to toss that extra magazine or premium chocolate bar into their cart, which damages a really significant portion of the store's bottom line. So to manage this super tricky balance, stores lean heavily into the psychology of deterrence. Consumers are actually highly aware of front door security. Over 63% of people notice security personnel, and almost 58% notice the security gates. Retailers absolutely know this. They use this visibility to their advantage, making sure the final checkpoint is obvious enough to scare off bad actors, but hopefully streamlined enough to not ruin the whole trip for the honest shoppers. The honestly brilliant psychology here is that just the mere presence of that checkpoint changes your behavior upstream. If you know a final check awaits you at the doors, you are subconsciously forced to be way more careful at the self-checkout terminal. Innocent error rates, like, forgetting to scan that heavy case of water hidden underneath the cart, drop significantly simply because the shopper anticipates that their receipt is going to be audited before they reach the parking lot. So ultimately, it turns out this final check is way less about accusing you directly of a crime and entirely about aligning their systems. It's the absolute final physical audit. It ensures that the digital receipt perfectly matches the physical items sitting in your cart, protecting the store from that $1.94 million average annual loss while keeping their inventory perfectly accurate. Yet, even knowing all that, it's pretty hard to ignore the social shift this creates. As one observer pointed out, when a receipt becomes a passport, the store built suspicion into the doorway. It fundamentally changes the relationship between the buyer and the seller. The transaction doesn't end at the cash register anymore. The control continues all the way to the exit glass. It basically transforms a simple, everyday grocery run into an exercise of constantly proving your innocence. As we wrap up this explainer, it really leaves us looking to the future. With AI sensors getting sharper by the day and automatic receipt gates becoming the new normal, we're left with a pretty provocative question to chew on. Just how much more automated, strict, and highly monitored will these invisible retail verification systems become in the years ahead? And ultimately, how much surveillance are we really willing to accept just to buy a simple loaf of bread?